The applications filed by the three defendants on the 30th of January claim immunity and qualified privilege, abuse of process, and also calls for proceedings to be stayed pending the conclusion of the Commission's investigation into the collapse of Enterprise Insurance. Mr Justice Butler presiding said proceedings would need to be postponed because of the large volume of paperwork involved, with Defence Counsel Desmond Brown QC of 5 RB Chambers proposing the 23rd of September. Mr Cruz's lawyer, Julian Santos, also of 5 RB Chambers, urged the court to provide as early a date as possible, given delays would be very costly for his client. Mr Santos also pointed out that the defendants themselves had engaged a team of senior lawyers at considerable expense to the taxpayer, including 2 QCs, throwing everything but the kitchen sink at his client. The judge questioned whether it would be more cost-efficient to hear the GFSC's applications after a malfeasance case being brought against the enterprise directors by the liquidator, Freddie White of Grant Thornton. However, Mr Santos argued the case was not relevant. In the ensuing discussion, it also emerged that Mr White himself was being sued by one of the enterprise directors. Mr Justice Butler asked Mr Brown why the Commission's investigation into the collapse of the insurance company was taking nearly 3 years and inquired when the directors would be interviewed. Mr Brown replied, in the autumn. The judge suggested it might be prudent to hear the applications after those interviews, but Mr Santos said this would result in a de facto stay of the proceedings. Mr Justice Butler then suggested hearing 1 or 2 of the applications immediately, but the defence argued that all 5 applications were interlinked. The judge also queried whether the defendant's application to strike out the matters of malice and bad faith raised in Nick Cruz's case was premature. Mr Justice Butler said although he would not be available to hear the applications in September, he would ask the court to consider the new date suggested and revert next week. When asked by GBC for comment, Nick Cruz said Samantha Barras, Peter Taylor and the GFSC should have filed a defence by the end of January, but instead filed 5 applications on the last day, aimed at preventing or delaying his right to vindicate his name without even so much as a hearing. He said he will now have to suffer a further substantial delay to progress his case and faces very significant additional costs. However, he said he remained determined and warned the defendants would do well not to underestimate that resolve. For its part, the Commission told GBC it wouldn't comment on an ongoing case.